young man named Kang Hyun is depicted as he prepares a meal and subsequently dines at a campsite. He is soon encircled by peculiar friends who wish to join him for a meal. A few days prior, Kang Hyun had arrived at his grandfather's deserted store alongside a companion, Yoonseop Hyun. Yoonseop inquires whether he, the most renowned chef in Korea, is genuinely planning to establish a restaurant in his grandfather's store. However, Hyun disregards the question and exits the vehicle while donning sunglasses and a nose mask. He asks Yoonseop if he is certain that no one is nearby, reminding him of the incident when they were caught by the paparazzi, the previous time they let their guard down. Although Yoonseop asserts that no one will follow him that far, Hyun appears more composed as a result. Upon entering the store, Hyun reflects on his past. He graduated from the CIA, one of the top 3 culinary schools, and won the Paris International Cooking Competition. This achievement led to recognition, resulting in numerous love calls from various television shows. However, he contemplates that some individuals might perceive him as having a promising future, given that he is a young and skilled chef. But he has faced challenges, as he had to decline the advances of overzealous fans, which in turn caused his envious co-workers to voice complaints about him. Although there were countless comments circulating on social media claiming that Hyun's culinary abilities are overstated, this criticism left him feeling disheartened and weary of the spotlight. Yoonseop advises him to contemplate the prospect of opening a restaurant in that location, asserting that he is confident Hyun will not generate significant income there. However, Hyun reminds him that his primary purpose for being there is to rest. They engage in a friendly back-and-forth exchange, and later, Hyun prepares a meal for them to share. As they sit down to eat, Hyun experiences a flashback to an incident where a customer exploded in rage over his cooking not meeting personal preferences. His friend, understanding his predicament, attempts to lift his spirits by proclaiming that the sauce tastes acceptable. This comment prompts Hyun to confront another pressing issue he faces. He has lost his ability to taste food. A doctor informed him that his loss of taste is a result of stress and is rooted in psychological factors. Thus, he cannot guarantee any improvement through surgery. Instead, the doctor advised Hyun to manage his stress first and suggested he find a hobby. Despite this, Yoonseop persists in trying to convince him to abandon the idea of opening a restaurant, expressing concern about the potential customer base. He doubts there is much opportunity in the area, to which Hyun responds that the surrounding mountains and fields are ideal because he can enjoy camping there. In a taxi en route to his camping destination, Hyun ponders the items he packed, attempting to ascertain whether he included all his essentials. The driver inquires if he is heading to the sea, to which Hyun responds that he is actually going camping in the mountains. The driver comments that he is dressed inappropriately for the occasion and asks if Hyun brought a tube along. Hyun, somewhat puzzled, questions the necessity of a tube, and the driver suggests that Hyun might need to reconsider his plans. Surprised by the man's cajoling tone, Hyun instructs him to head to Yongpyong village. The driver, however, informs him that tubes are not sold there. Nevertheless, Hyun insists he has a specific stop to make. Upon arriving at Yongpyong village, Hyun approaches a house, reasoning that it is his first visit since his grandfather's passing. He resolves to tidy up the place before departing. While gazing at the house, he notices that the storage door is ajar and sneaks over to investigate, suspecting a thief may be inside. Clutching his stainless camping bag, he contemplates using it as a weapon against the intruder, but a sudden cat meow nearly startles him out of his wits. He experiences a sense of relief as he enters the room, searching for the light switch. However, as he steps further inside, he feels a peculiar sensation, reasoning that the space appears much smaller than it does from the outside. This discrepancy perplexes him because he had anticipated a more expansive area. Although he tries to shake off the unease, it lingers in the back of his mind. As Hyun strides into the room, he experiences a powerful gust of wind and soon discovers he is precariously perched at the edge of a cliff. However, instead of water below, he finds a dazzling array of lights in various hues illuminating the darkness. Suddenly, he loses his footing and plummets onto a grassy expanse. While trying to comprehend his surroundings, a squirrel approaches and licks his hand. He gazes at the creature in fear, reasoning that its ears are disproportionately large, but to his astonishment, the squirrel, which possesses no wings, takes flight using its ears. He then hears a noise and turns to observe a rabbit emerging from the grass. Initially feeling a sense of relief, his comfort dissipates when the rabbit stands up, revealing itself to be enormous, muscular, and resembling a human. The rabbit saunters past him, seemingly indifferent, before it hops away. This unsettling occurrence terrifies Hyan, prompting him to dash about in search of an exit, convinced that he must escape the perilous environment. As night falls, he finds himself still unsuccessful in locating an exit and, already weary, he contemplates his grim fate. There are no people or cell phone reception in this eerie place, and the doctor had advised him to go camping, yet he never anticipated getting lost. He experiences hunger and successfully manages to ignite a fire. However, most of his food supplies are contained within the camping bag that he inadvertently dropped in the storage room. Consequently, he resolves to settle for some meat, which he begrudgingly cooks. After preparing it, he takes his first bite, reasoning that he would typically have to spit it out the moment it entered his mouth. Nevertheless, because it is tasteless, he finds he can consume it. In a fit of anger, he discards the food and wraps his arms around himself, tears welling in his eyes. Suddenly, he raises his gaze and observes a multitude of wolves drawing near. He instinctively grabs a pocket knife, reasoning that there is little he can accomplish with such a small weapon. One of the wolves lunges at him, causing him to shut his eyes in terror. However, the wolf refrains from attacking, and when he finally opens his eyes, he realizes that all the wolves have vanished. He ponders their whereabouts and notices a small white dog has devoured the food he discarded. He pets the dog and inquires about its origin. As the dog inches closer to him, Hyan feels self-conscious and tells the dog to leave if it has finished eating, because he does not particularly like dogs. While he pets the dog, he expresses his confusion regarding the common perception that dogs are cute. He gazes at the dog, pondering why it truly appears adorable. However, he ultimately recognizes that it resembles a small wolf. Although this realization may seem trivial, it provokes deeper thoughts about the nature of domesticated animals and their wild ancestors. Hyan swiftly surveys his surroundings, contemplating the whereabouts of the wolf's mother. He inquires whether the wolves he encountered earlier are indeed its family. However, a sense of trepidation envelops him, as he fears that the mother may misconstrue his intentions and believe he has abducted her cub. Hyan ultimately resigns himself to the notion that, regardless of whether it is a dog or a wolf, he could face dire consequences. He might be consumed or perish from starvation. Nevertheless, one certainty remains: he is bound to meet his demise in some form. The little wolf attempts to pull him along, prompting Hyan to ask if it intends to consume him. He then cautions the creature about the peculiar scent of humans, which he describes as fishy. The wolf diverts his attention to a hole, and in that moment, Hyan recognizes it as the very one he had fallen through. He wonders if he might retrace his steps through that same opening. However, he resolves to maintain his composure as the wolf ventures further down, suggesting it could be a portal to a realm of despair. Just as he leans down for a closer inspection, the wolf dashes toward him and unexpectedly propels him into the abyss. Hyan tumbles through the darkness, only to find himself back in his grandfather's cluttered storage room. Almost overwhelmed with relief at his return, he reflects on the wolf and realizes he never had the opportunity to express his gratitude. A smile forms on his face as he acknowledges that he likely will not encounter the wolf again, but this debt of thankfulness will linger in his memory. Unbeknownst to Hyan, the wolf also tumbled through the hole and is now positioned next to him. Hyan brings the wolf indoors and gives it a bath. Afterward, he writes various names on a board and prompts the wolf to select one. Later that evening, he finds himself sleeping with the wolf beside him. The following morning, Hyan awakens feeling refreshed, reasoning that he hasn't slept so well in ages. He soon encounters a dog bowl filled with dog food, which he places in front of the wolf, asserting that wolves are a type of dog, and therefore the food should be acceptable. However, the wolf declines to eat, prompting Hyan to present cat food and rabbit food instead. Yet, the wolf continues to refuse. Frustrated, Hyan wonders if he should let the wolf go hungry. He resolves to address the wolf's dietary concerns while also managing his own food needs. As he prepares his meal and sits down to eat, he reflects that he cannot truly taste the food. Nonetheless, he worked hard on it, and perhaps some of it might be palatable. At that moment, the wolf, whom Hyan has affectionately named Rice Cake, leaps onto the table, beginning to devour Hyan's meal. Hyan observes that Rice Cake is cleverly steering clear of convenience store food, even avoiding the steak he had brought home. Hyan sets 2 plates of steak before Rice Cake. One is his own culinary creation, while the other was procured from a convenience store. He rationalizes that both were prepared using similar techniques. However, the sauces differ significantly. One features a commercial sauce, whereas the other showcases his unique recipe sauce, which garnered acclaim in an international cooking competition. Rice Cake first inhales the aroma of the steak dressed in the commercial sauce, and Hyan believes this sauce is also quite delectable. Yet, if Rice Cake opts for his special sauce, it would indicate that he possesses the refined palate of an Epicurean. After consuming the commercial steak, Rice Cake eagerly sniffs Hyan's offering, and to Hyan's delight, he devours it with evident enjoyment. This pleases Hyan, who proudly acknowledges that Rice Cake is indeed no ordinary wolf. Hyan is engaged in painting his grandfather's store in anticipation of the restaurant's opening. However, he is not executing the task particularly well. He wonders to himself whether there might be an issue with the color or the paint itself. Just then, a man arrives and remarks that it is hardly surprising, considering Hyan is painting outdoors with paint intended for indoor use. Hyan turns to regard the stranger, who turns out to be an elderly gentleman, and inquires about his identity. The man reveals that he is the head of the village, the very person Hyan should have greeted upon his arrival. He comments on Hyan's rather subpar painting abilities and inquires if this is his first experience with such work. The man then becomes distracted upon spotting Rice Cake, attempting to pet the dog. He instructs Hyan to cease painting, promising to find someone else to handle the task. Hyan is taken aback and offers to call someone, but the man insists that there are individuals in the village who can do it, lamenting that Hyan does not appreciate the value of money. While still trying to pet Rice Cake, he advises Hyan not to schedule anything for the weekend, assuring him that he will arrange for someone to paint. This leaves Hyan feeling uneasy, but he finds himself with little option. True to his word, the village head arrives with a man to paint for Hyan. He claims that this man is the son of the Jung family and possesses considerable skill. The painter introduces himself to Hyan as young Minho. When Hyan reciprocates with his own introduction, he is taken aback by their arrival. He observes them as they deliberate on the best method to paint the wall and wonders why they are exerting so much effort when it is not even their house. The village head inquires about the type of restaurant Hyan plans to open. In response, he mentions that he intends to establish an Italian restaurant, to which Minho asks if he will offer pork cutlets. While seated inside the store, Minho elaborates that his wife enjoys pork cutlets, but the restaurant they frequent is currently closed. Because she is pregnant, they cannot venture far, so he attempted to make the dish himself. However, he found the taste unsatisfactory. Sensing Hyan's uncertainty, Minho reassures him that it's perfectly acceptable if he does not include it on the menu, as he was merely curious. Hyan reflects that pork cutlets are relatively easy to prepare, but he harbors doubts about serving customers food whose taste he is not familiar with. He ponders whether he ought not to open the restaurant. He recalls Rice Cake and informs Minho that he can prepare pork cutlets. However, he believes he will assist him in reliving the past, because this seems important to him. Although there are doubts, he feels a sense of nostalgia. Hyan meticulously examines the recipe for the pork cutlets he intends to prepare. He recalls Minho's comment regarding the sauce, noting that it appeared more brown than red and possessed a sweetness attributed to the tomatoes. However, he contemplates that incorporating tomatoes might render the dish bitter. Ultimately, he deduces that ketchup was likely the actual ingredient used. After an extensive period of meal preparation, Hyan calls for Rice Cake and presents him with the pork cutlets. He observes that Rice Cake is wagging his tail more slowly than usual, prompting him to wonder if this change is due to an overpowering sweetness. He offers Rice Cake another serving, yet he still perceives a weakness in the dog's wagging. As he provides yet another batch, he reflects on how, after losing his sense of taste, cooking had become less enjoyable. He could not savor his own creations. Nevertheless, this experience is now gratifying, as he has discovered a method for evaluating the flavor of his dish. Minho arrives with his wife at Hyan's restaurant. As they settle at a table, he inquires about her morning sickness, asking if it has improved. She responds that it is manageable, and, because she has heard about a new restaurant opening, she expresses her excitement to dine there. Hyan presents them with the pork cutlets, which appear delectable. Minho's wife praises the meal, remarking on its delightful aroma. As she takes her first bite, both Hyan and Minho observe her intently, asking how she finds it. She mentions that the countryside store had good pork cutlets, but she believes Hyan's are superior. She continues, stating that while the sauce is similar, the meat is undeniably crispier and juicier, and she has never encountered pork cutlets of such quality before. As Hyan watches their interaction, Minho's wife reminisces about their first date. She recalls that they also had pork cutlets that day, and he was so preoccupied with her side, eyeing her instead of eating, that it made him quite nervous. This memory seems to unsettle Minho, as she describes how his hands trembled so much that it caused him distress. After that experience, she admits to developing a fondness for pork cutlets, stating, "I didn't really care for them before, but I came to enjoy them because I treasure the memory of that day with you." Meanwhile, Hyan smiles and glances at Rice Cake, who remains asleep after indulging in too many pork cutlets. Hyan finds himself seated in solitude within his restaurant, diligently crafting his menu. He concludes that serving a customer prior to the grand opening has illuminated the necessity of catering to customer preferences, rather than strictly adhering to an Italian theme. However, he acknowledges that establishments of that nature tend to operate on a reservation-only basis and can be prohibitively expensive. Determined to navigate this challenge, he glances at Rice Cake, who lies dejectedly on the floor. Hyan contemplates whether Rice Cake yearns for the forest from which he originated, prompting him to resolve to return Rice Cake to his former world. He reasons that the house may feel emptier in his absence, yet he reassures Rice Cake that he intends to escort him back home. Suddenly, it dawns on him that this journey would require his own return, leading him to reconsider his decision. Rice Cake gazes up at him with eyes full of tenderness, but Hyan resolutely insists that he will not succumb to that allure, as he is unwilling to revisit that place. It appears that, despite all his refusals, Hyan eventually travels to another world alongside Rice Cake. He is immediately struck by discomfort and resolves to act swiftly. As he wanders through this unfamiliar landscape with Rice Cake, he ponders the nature of this place. Could it be a different dimension akin to those depicted in comics? Upon arriving at a lake, he reflects that he would likely feel homesick if his home resembled this idyllic setting. Meanwhile, Rice Cake frolics in the water, prompting Hyan to retrieve a pack and announce that he has a gift for him, acknowledging that Rice Cake had assisted him with the pork cutlets. Thus, he decides to treat him to some expensive meat. Hyan sets up a grill and begins to prepare the meat. Rice Cake consumes it with great enthusiasm while Hyan observes. However, after some time, Hyan senses that something is lacking. He then produces a can of beer, reasoning that alcohol cannot be overlooked when both the view and the meat are exceptional. As he takes a sip, he realizes he cannot discern any flavor, but he has heard that one does not consume alcohol solely for its taste. However, just as he continues to drink, a man abruptly presses a sword against his throat, asserting that Hyun does not appear to be from a neighboring village and that he has never encountered the artifacts accompanying him before. He inquires of Hyun regarding his identity, pondering whether he is a wizard or perhaps a scout. However, Hyun is too frightened by the sword positioned at his throat to respond. Hyun stays quiet when the man asks him questions, thinking about how no one would have guessed he'd be in a situation where a sword was held at his throat. He claims he's a chef and says he's not a suspicious person. The man asks why he is in the area and Hyun answers that he was just admiring the view. However, this answer angers the man, who questions why he would admire the scenery in a forest known for demonic beasts. The man pushes the sword against Hyun's neck, threatening to kill him if he doesn't reveal why he's there. In that tense moment, the man sees rice cake and is surprised. Trying to change the man's mind, Hyun offers him any amount of money he wants. But the man apologizes, saying that the place isn't for ordinary people, so his reaction was a bit extreme. Although he was threatening, he then introduces himself as Randolph, a knight from a nearby territory. Hyun introduces himself too, confused by Randolph's sudden change in attitude. This whole situation is strange, because one moment he was in danger and the next, he was just talking to a knight. Randolph explains that Hyun's company of a white wolf, a creature that exists only in folktales, suggests that he is not a bad person. However, noticing the confusion on Hyun's face, Randolph realizes that he is unaware of the importance of the wolf. Although this is surprising, it makes sense, because many people do not know the meanings behind some symbols. Randolph explains that the white wolves are part of a family that inherits the spirit of an ancient god. They are said to be descendants of the wolf god, who is thought to have eyes that can tell the difference between right and wrong, along with great wisdom. Randolph says that the white wolf species has gained some of these traits, and indeed, a white wolf is with Hyun. This presence, Hyun feels, clarifies all of Rice Cake's actions. Randolph asks if Hyun is eating while looking at the lake. He believes that food eaten in such a place feels more special. He then questions what kind of meat Hyun is having. Hyun replies that it's beef and invites him to have some too. Randolph tries to say no. However, he struggles to resist the temptation of the meat, so he agrees to taste just a little. To his surprise, the beef tastes amazing. He thinks that it's unlikely he could easily find meat of such quality. Seeing Hyun's can of beer, he asks what it is. Hyun tells him that it's alcohol, which leads Randolph to wonder if it comes from the area where he lives. Randolph notes that the cup looks interesting. He asks if the flavor will be just as unique. Hyun gives him a taste. However, Randolph pulls it back. He says that there's no reason to refuse it because Hyun has put it in his hands. Hyun makes another can and suggests that Randolph should take the new one, since he has already finished the previous one. Randolph takes the beer with excitement, saying how surprised he is at how clean it tastes. Hyun thinks about how much Randolph has changed. He is now very different from the man who once had a blade against his throat, instead looking like just another foreigner in the neighborhood. Randolph says he can't let Hyun leave empty-handed, especially after enjoying such a great meal. He mentions that if Hyun ever comes to his town, he should look for him and say he is searching for the Robentus Knight Captain Randolph. This makes Hyun wonder, even though he is confused, if Randolph is really a squadron leader. Meanwhile, Randolph figures that Hyun's lack of surprise about his position shows he is truly an amazing person. However, even though Randolph wants to tell Hyun to be careful because you never know what could happen, he feels sure that Hyun will be okay, thanks to the white wolf being there. As Randolph leaves the area, Hyun tries to warn him, saying that drinking beer while on patrol is not a smart idea. Ultimately, he realizes that, because of the different world they live in, they have to follow a totally different set of rules. He loves rice cake as the last meal he eats with joy. Hyan knows that it is because of rice cake that life has been lively for a while. However, it is upsetting that he has to say goodbye to him, but he understands. Although it's hard, this is part of their lives now. As Hyan gathers his things, he tells Rice Cake, who is still enjoying the meat, that he appreciated their short time together. It was because of Rice Cake that he managed to make tasty pork cutlets. However, he is unsure if they will see each other again. He urges Rice Cake to take care of himself for now. Rice Cake, seeming indifferent, keeps enjoying the meal. Hyan, feeling a slight annoyance, thinks about why people often say that raising children is pointless. He remembers that their time apart hasn't been long, yet he thinks Rice Cake should show a stronger bond with him. When he looks back at Rice Cake, he sees that the latter is now holding onto his bag. Hyan is surprised and asks why Rice Cake is acting like this. In response, Rice Cake licks his hand. Hyan explains that they are in his hometown, a place he wants to visit again, but Rice Cake is still trying to follow him. Suddenly, Rice Cake jumps onto him, making Hyan ask if he wants to stay by his side. Looking at him with affection, Rice Cake gets a response from Hyan, who admits he had no choice but to bring him along before. However, since Rice Cake seems unresponsive, they will be coming back together. Upon returning to Hyan's world, he thinks about whether this means he has to keep visiting the other realm. However, he finally realizes that he can still enjoy Rice Cake and have some fun, just like they did before. As he gets closer to his restaurant, he sees a big crowd of people outside, having a good time, and this makes him wonder why so many are gathered in front of his home. The village head spots him and walks over, which prompts Hyan to ask about the crowd. The village head tells him they are having a feast, and Hyan replies that he didn't know about it, adding that even if he had known, he wouldn't have gone. Just then, a man comes to tell the village head that the banner has arrived, and Hyan, feeling like he's not really invited, starts to make his excuses. Nevertheless, the village head insists that he should join them, because the celebration is for him. They pull out the banner, which says, "Congratulations on joining Village Soul's Li Kang Hyan," leaving Hyan staring in surprise. Hyan feels a strong sense of affection from the villagers, who all seem eager to talk with him and share their ideas. However, Minho and his wife show up to help him, giving him a much-needed chance to relax. He asks if they celebrate like this when a newcomer arrives. Minho's wife explains that, because it is a small town, they try to keep close relationships. She points out that their get-togethers are filled with happy times and mutual congratulations, which means their gatherings aren't just about drinking. The village head agrees with her, telling Hyan that sharing is caring. He also highlights the importance of being true to oneself in the community. Then, he reminds Hyan that his restaurant is about to open, which is a great opportunity for promotion. Hyan thinks about how important it is to spread the word about his place, watching the villagers enjoy themselves and chat excitedly. He realizes that the celebration is not as scary as he first thought. In the meantime, Rice Cake enjoys his adventures. He eats different kinds of meats and cleverly escapes the villagers who try to catch him. He rushes around, stealing food and causing chaos. Minho tries to warn Hyan about what's happening. However, Hyan ignores his warnings. He believes he should have just left Rice Cake in the other realm, because this would have made things easier. Although things are crazy, Rice Cake seems to be having a great time. Hyan sees a young boy sitting alone, looking really sad. He is surprised to find such a small child in town and wonders if the boy's gloomy mood is because he lacks friends. As he watches, the boy's grandmother comes over with a snack. However, the boy throws it away instead of eating it. When the boy runs off, his grandmother calls out to him, using the name Sanghu, and it's clear that she is worried. The village head comes over and asks what's going on. She explains that Sanghu has been acting this way since he got home from school the day before, because his friend was bragging about eating a hamburger. She says she bought one for him, but she doubts it could ever match the one his friend had. Hyan hears this and figures that Sanghu probably doesn't want a store-bought hamburger. A man suggests he could get a better one on his way home from work the next day. But the village head replies that hamburgers aren't sold nearby, pointing out that they can only be found at MCD, a place filled with lots of theme parks. The villagers are worried about getting a hamburger for Sanghu, so the village head suggests that they could make one themselves if it's not available nearby. He points to Hyan and says they have a chef from Seoul who probably knows a lot about this. However, some villagers doubt they can do it, because they've never tried making a hamburger before. Although they have their doubts, they still want to give it a shot. Hyan watches with confusion as the villagers agree to the village head's orders. The village head tells Hyan that he is their only hope for making the hamburger. However, he accepts this duty with clear hesitation. Also, the village head says that the hamburger doesn't have to taste like the one that Sanghu probably likes, because it's likely that Sanghu doesn't even want a hamburger at all. He thinks that Sanghu feels jealous, since his friend's family has gone out together. He explains that Sanghu's mom is sick and in the hospital, while his dad is away for work, which adds to Sanghu's deep loneliness and sadness. As Hyan thinks about this new insight into the situation, the village head stresses that Sanghu is the only child in their town. This means it's very important for the community to look after him. Hyan looks at the village head, realizing that he seems to understand the problems everyone faces. However, the scattered beer bottles and caps around him still confuse Hyan. In the quiet of the night, Hyan finds himself in his restaurant, thinking about the details of making a hamburger. He thinks he can do this task easily. However, even though he has never been to a McDonald's, he knows how important it is to get it right. Rice Cake, his always hungry friend, shows his empty plate, signaling his hunger, but Hyan is focused on the troubles of the villagers. They have to live only on side dishes because someone has taken their meat. This realization makes preparing a hamburger a small act of kindness for him. Rice Cake rolls on the floor, trying to look cute, but Hyan tells him that there is no food left for him, although he himself really wants to enjoy some. As Hyan carefully puts together the hamburger and sets it down in front of Rice Cake, he watches the creature eat it and realizes that he only used a picture to make it. However, he sees that Rice Cake's tail isn't wagging as excitedly as he wanted. This makes him think about his past. He remembers the happiness of enjoying meals while studying and his move to America, driven by his love for cooking. It seems a bit strange to him that he never really committed to anything else. He wonders what his younger self would think about where he is now. In a moment of frustration, he asks Rice Cake if there's any chance of getting more food. Rice Cake replies with happy barks, which makes Hyan feel ready to cook again. He thinks that asking Rice Cake to take it easy on him is pretty tough, especially because he has always approached cooking with such strong dedication. As Hyan prepares the hamburger, Minho and his wife settle down with Sangho and his grandmother at the restaurant. Minho's wife says it smells really good and Hyan knows how to cook anything, which is impressive. She asks Sanghu, who looks serious, if he is happy to finally eat a hamburger. However, before he can answer, Hyan comes in and puts a plate of the hamburger in front of him. Sangwoo takes a bite and is filled with joy, thinking that it is 100 times better than the one from the convenience store. He tells his grandmother this, and she smiles, happy to see him happy. But soon, he feels a wave of sadness and admits that he actually just wanted to see his mom. He thought he could go to Seoul, where his mother is, if he asked for a burger. Because of this, he says sorry for being rude. His grandmother hugs him, also feeling sad for Sangho, as she realizes the challenges he faces. She then apologizes for not understanding sooner. As they hug, she recognizes that he must have been really sad living without his parents, even though he is so young. Sangho, who is currently crying, says that he is fine living with her. He shows his feelings for their cohabitation. However, Hyan then says that he will be going to Seoul soon and Sangho can come with him. Both Sangho and his grandma are surprised by this news. He asks if he can really go with Hyan. To this, Hyan replies that they might even visit the place Sangho has always wanted to go, especially because he has never had a burger from there. This news makes Sangho really happy, and he excitedly says he wants to go with Hyan. Minho's wife tells him to take a lot of pictures to share with her when he gets back. Although Hyun thinks he has gone too far, as Sang-hoo and his grandma leave Hyun's restaurant, they show their thanks with big smiles. He reassures them that a trip to Seoul will happen soon. Hyun looks at the leftover ingredients he has and thinks about how much he has. He wonders if he should go on a camping trip with them. However, he quickly remembers that he has never really camped before and doubts if he would have time once the restaurant opens. Noticing Rice Cake staring at him with a cute expression, he asks why Rice Cake is looking at him like that, since he never said he was going to the other world. Hyun tells Rice Cake that he is not going there yet, but as usual, he can't help himself and they end up going to the other world. While Rice Cake plays around, Hyun realizes he has been to this place more times than he has been to the grocery store. He admits that the view is nice and starts to set up his tent. Although he struggles with the tent, Rice Cake keeps playing and eventually, he gets it set up. Tired, he sits down to rest and suddenly feels hungry. Hyun cooks a meat dish, and as he begins to eat, two little squirrels come over, staring at him closely. He tosses some meat pieces their way. However, a large bird swoops down and grabs the food before it can reach the squirrels. After eating his meal, Hyun finds himself sitting and looking at the landscape. He thinks at first about his worries regarding boredom. However, he has come to see that moments of stillness can also be enjoyable. This realization might be what people call healing. He wonders where Rice Cake is, but he feels calm, knowing that the creature will come back when it gets hungry. Deciding to start a bonfire, he doesn't notice that something or maybe someone is quietly watching him from the bushes. The hidden figure rustles the leaves and Hyun, thinking it's Rice Cake, shouts that he has plenty of meat. Just as he turns to face the creature, which seems ready to take his food, he quickly shifts his position. Hyun realizes that this creature is definitely not Rice Cake. He locks eyes with the being, who growls, and soon he sees that it is a girl. Hyun notices that the creature has a tail and he wonders if it could be a cat. He also thinks about whether she might be a mix of human and beast, like what he sees in movies. As she lunges for the plate again, he cleverly sidesteps her. He reflects on where Rice Cake is during this important moment, wishing he were there. In an attempt to calm things down, he suggests to the girl that they should deal with the issue peacefully. He puts the plate on the ground and asks her if she is hungry. He tells her he will give her the plate of meat so she can go back to how she was before. The girl crawls towards the bowl of meat, starting to pick at it with her mouth. However, she suddenly drops the beef and begins to breathe heavily through her mouth. Hyun realizes that the kimchi stew he used is pretty spicy. This, he understands, is what is making her uncomfortable. He leaves to get her some water. However, when he comes back, he finds that she has kept eating the meat, realizing that it still tastes really good. Rice Cake arrives and Hyun starts to serve the rest of the meat to him. But when Rice Cake sees the girl chowing down on the beef, he attacks her. Hyun, feeling desperate, tries to step in, yet the two start fighting each other. After a lot of begging with both to stop their fighting, a huge man, looking pretty beastly like the girl, shows up. He says sorry to Hyun and takes her away, leaving him confused. Hyun is seen cleaning the restaurant and he comments that the next day is finally their opening day. He thinks that, although he came to relax at first, he might have enjoyed his free time a bit too much. Now that he has decided to open a business, he knows he needs to prepare well. An elderly woman watches the building while Hyun counts the preparations he has finished. After that, she goes into the restaurant and asks if he is open. He tells her they will open the next day. However, he seems unable to say no to her request, so he invites her to sit down. Instead, she looks around and asks why he is keeping the old table instead of throwing it away. As she keeps exploring, she comments that the place looks the same. He asks her if she was there when it used to be a tea house, but she replies with a question about what he will serve. He says he will mainly offer Western food, like pasta and pizza, and she encourages him to make some pasta for her. He then asks what kind of pasta she wants, but she insists he should choose that himself. Hyan heads to the kitchen to prepare the pasta. He thinks it might be her first time trying this dish, and because tomato pasta is so common, she should enjoy it. As he cooks and serves the pasta, he considers that since she is the first customer of his restaurant, he needs to provide her with the best service. He carefully sets the pasta on her table and watches from a distance as she takes her first bite. He realizes that he hasn't tasted the dish himself, yet he's heard many compliments about it. This makes him think it must be good. However, the woman drops her chopsticks before finishing and asks about the price. He is shocked as he looks at her, and at that moment, the village head arrives. He recognizes her and calls her Grandma Park, asking why she is at the restaurant. As she leaves, she insists that she came to eat. He reminds her that the official opening is set for tomorrow, but she argues that she has already finished her meal. He then steps inside the restaurant to find Hyan looking sad and filled with concern because she left so much food uneaten. He wonders what the underlying issue could possibly be. However, he can't help but feel that there's more to it than just the food. Although he wants to ask her, he hesitates. This moment feels heavy, and he is unsure how to approach her. Hyan sits in a corner feeling bad about Grandma Park not eating his pasta. The village head becomes worried and asks him what is wrong and if the preparations are not going well, and he replies that is not the problem as he will be closing down the restaurant. The village head is shocked as he reasons that Hyan has not even opened the restaurant yet. He then realizes that it is because Grandma Park left a lot of food. He points out that it is not like Hyan won some international cooking competition and he cannot expect to satisfy everyone. He urges Hyan to shrug it off as it is possible Grandma Park did not come there for the food. He explains that her late husband used to come there often when the place was still a tea house, and he would go there so often that the door threshold wore out, but he passed the previous year. The village head tells Hyan that Grandma Park spent most of her time alone at home, and it has been a while since he last saw her, so he guesses she still thinks about her husband a lot. He says the dead are dead, so the living should live their lives, and clinging to the past is nothing but foolish. He then goes back to the issue and tells Hyan that it is not his fault as Grandma Park is rather picky when it comes to food and considering the situation she is in. He does not have to pay it any mind. Hyan says there is no way he will not pay mind after hearing all that, and it is already giving him a headache, so he goes to the other world to relax. As he sits watching Rice Cake play with the huge rabbit, he reasons if no dangerous animals are lurking around the area because he has them. He feels relieved and says there is no place as good as the other world to sort his thoughts. He remembers Grandma Park and thinks that he was shocked to see her leave so much pasta on the plate. But he feels sorry for her now that he has heard her story. As he asks himself if he should prepare some Korean food for her next time, he looks up to the tree and sees the girl lying on a branch. He is surprised to see her, but he ignores her and prepares a meal as Rice Cake is hungry. The girl sits close to him as he prepares the meal. He remembers how she stopped eating the first time due to the pepper, and he decides to skip the pepperoncini. He melts butter in a pan, adds mushrooms, and sprinkles in a bit of pepper and salt. As the cream thickens, he adds in the Parmesan cheese and puts in the cooked pasta. He tops it with steak and places the meal in front of the girl. She growls at him, but he only warns her to eat up before it gets stolen. The girl seems to hesitate as she remembers how spicy it was at the first time. She bits into the steak and she is surprised at how delicious it is. She digs into the meal and Hyan, who has been watching her, says she may not be articulated into words, but he can see that she liked it. Hyan sits to eat his own plate, reasoning that he does not really like the pasta as the cream and steak are both greasy and heavy, and that combination does not work for him, as it is more of a fusion pasta than a traditional one. The girl starts rubbing on him, and he points out that she attacked him the last time they met, but she is now acting all cute. He says it seems the pasta was really good, and he reasons that it does not really matter if it's fusion or traditional pasta as long as it suits the palate of whoever is eating it. He feels enlightened that it just has to taste good to the person eating it. and the girl watches him in confusion. Back at his restaurant, Hyun is preparing some vegetables and he serves them to Rice Cake, who completely ignores him and the vegetables. He reasons that he has to do without him this time. He reassures himself that it will not be difficult for him, as the taste of all the ingredients is ingrained in his memory, and he cannot rely on Rice Cake forever. Meanwhile, he had placed a notice at the restaurant door saying the restaurant would be opened next week due to personal reasons. Hyun feels a chef who failed to satisfy his first guest does not deserve to open his restaurant and get to work. The village head goes to visit Grandma Park, who is sitting in her house. He says he thinks she has finally come out of the house, but yet she still chooses to sit there. He tells her to come out as there are so many fun things outside her house, but she only asks him what brings him to her place, and he asks if he cannot stop by his neighbor's place. He then goes on to say Hyun was in quite a shock after she left the plate of pasta, and she says the dish did not suit her taste and that should not have shocked him. The village head then suggests that since she does not have anything else to do, she should visit Hyun a second time. Grandma Park asks him why she would do something so bothersome, and he replies that it could be different this time around. As he hesitates, he asks if it is that difficult for her to walk out of the gates. He urges her to give Hyun another chance, and it could be worth the effort, and he leaves. Meanwhile, Hyun is done cooking. He stares at the plate of pasta and says focusing on one main vegetable while making the dish was indeed a better choice. And since he balanced it out with some seafood, the two different tastes should work well. He reasons that the problem now is he does not know how to invite Grandma Park. And the doorbell rings. He steps out to check who it is, and he meets Grandma Park, who asks him if he is open. As Grandma Park sits at the table waiting for the meal, she wonders how Hyun knew she would come by that the food was already made, and she feels reluctant that he is probably going to serve her pasta again. She admits to herself that she does not like the taste of it at all, and she should not have come by the restaurant. She perceives the smell of the food, and it stirs her interest. Hyun serves the pasta saying it is an item from his restaurant's special menu, and he calls it the daily pasta. She stares at the plate wondering if they also have dailies in the States. She gets ready to eat the pasta wondering if it will taste better, and she tastes the spring greens Hyun used in cooking the pasta. Grandma Park remembers a time when her husband was still alive, and they sat by a tree. He said spring was in full spring, and he felt more flowers had bloomed compared to the previous year. He gives her some flowers and playfully asks if she is free so they can have a cup of tea together, and she asks him why he is doing that. Grandma Park stares at the flowers outside Hyun's restaurant windows and reasons that it is spring again. She continues eating the pasta and comments that it was not on the menu before. Hyun admits that it wasn't, and she asks if he made it for her. She asks why he went out of her way to do that, and he says he wanted to make food that she would like, and he also wanted to try something new and improve. Hyun realizes that he cannot rely on Rice Cake forever, which is why he wants to satisfy his first guest without Rice Cake's help. Grandma Park finishes her meal and asks him how much she owes him. Hyun is shocked that she ate everything, and he says she does not have to pay. She asks what kind of restaurant owner does not make his guests pay, and she then insists that since she ate so well, she has to pay for it. She advises him not to lower the value of the food he makes, and she tells him to add the dish to his menu as she will come back again. Hyun smiles happily as she leaves. Hyun is in the other world relaxing. He is happy that he managed to satisfy his first guest and finally opened his restaurant. All that is left is to take some time to heal. And since Rice Cake makes a fuss if he does not go to the other world, he decides to go there often to relax. As Hyun is relaxing, Randolph shoots an arrow at a bird, but he misses and the bird almost hits Hyun. He greets Hyun, who is lying on the ground as he had fallen from the attack. As they later settle down, Hyun asks Randolph if he is on patrol. He replies that he is off duty, so he comes to hunt a bit. Randolph then says he will treat Hyun to a meal and they should go hunting together. Hyun reasons that he does not want to go, but he ends up holding a bow and arrows to hunt. Randolph takes him and rice cake to an area and explains that it is frequented by jumping birds. As he shows Hyun the jumping birds, Hyun reasons that the birds look like cotton candy and he feels sorry about killing the cute animals. Randolph then explains that although their feathers look soft, the birds are actually a short-haired species. As the birds start fighting each other, Hyun realizes that the cotton candy look is actually compressed muscle. This makes him scared and he wonders how he will catch the birds. But Randolph is already hunting and he tells Hyun to assist him from behind. Hyun resolves his mind and tries to calmly shoot an arrow. He aims at the bird, but he almost hits Rice Cake, who instantly feels betrayed. Randolph later prepares the meat of the bird on a fire, and he asks Hyun if he can eat as his hands are shaking badly. Hyun says he can endure it, but he reasons that he is worried about the meat as it stinks and he feels it will be rude to cover his nose. Randolph gives him a meat to eat, and as Hyun takes a bite, he realizes that it is possible for someone who has lost their sense of taste to know when a food tastes bad. Randolph notices Hyun's hesitation to eat the meat, and in a bid to impress him, he says he will show off his skills with the remaining beef, but Hyun stops him. Hyun suddenly feels unconfident as he remembers that he cannot taste food, so he might not be able to cook well. He decides to change his mindset by proving that he has the skills, and he tells Randolph to let him make something good with the meat. As Hyun tends to the meat, he reasons that he tried to get rid of the bad smell by removing as much blood as possible in the creek. But that process usually takes half a day, so it was nowhere near enough. He removes the unpleasant smell with some beer, and Randolph tries to stop him. But Hyun warns him to build something he can hang the pot on before getting more annoyed. As Randolph builds the support, Hyun fills the pot with beer and water, adds other ingredients, and cooks the meat for an hour. Rice Cake, who had previously run away to avoid eating Randolph's meat, arrives back at the smell of Hyun's cooking. Hyun uncovers the pot and the sweet aroma gets to Randolph and Rice Cake. They are ready to eat, but Hyun says he still has to roast it one more time. He reasons that he would have put it in an oven. But one of the beauties of camping is that they can roast the meat over the fire. Hyun cuts the meat into bite-sized pieces and serves it to Randolph, who is still wondering if the savory smell is really the jumping bird meat. He reasons that even the best chefs in the territory have given up on transforming the jumping bird meat into an edible dish. He takes his first bite and is shocked at the taste. He continues eating, reasoning that the outside of the meat is as crispy as a cookie. But at the same time, the meat's chewiness has been preserved while the insides are tender and juicy. He wonders if it is really the same jumping bird meat that he has always been eating, and he feels something is missing from the meal, as there must be something to strike a balance with the dish to make it perfect. He suddenly remembers the beer and tells Hyun to give him a can. As he drinks the beer and eats the meat, he praises Hyun, saying it is the perfect beer side dish and he does not think he will ever get tired of eating it. Hyun says it is not bad, but he could have completely gotten rid of the smell, and there is a reason the blood removal process takes a long time. He continues, saying they could have let it sit for a bit longer too, and he should make sure to carry around some laurel leaves just in case. Randolph is shocked that Hyun is unsatisfied even after creating such an amazing dish. He reasons that Hyun's skill level might be higher than the capital's royal chefs, and he wonders who Hyun really is. As they continue to eat the meat, Randolph says he wanted to treat Hyun to a meal, but he ends up getting treated by him again, and he can never eat normal jumping bird meat after the wonderful meal. He asks Hyun if he can copy his cooking techniques, and he replies that he does not care as it is nothing incredible. Randolph argues that he is acquainted with some chefs, so he knows the value of Hyun's skills. He says Hyun's dishes are brilliant, and he should stop undervaluing himself. Hyun reasons that he has been hearing that a lot recently, and he thanks Randolph, who says he wants to repay him with something amazing. So he will teach Hyun swordsmanship. As Hyun stares at him in shock, Randolph says he might be stationed in the countryside, but he once had a good reputation in the capital and his swordsmanship should be an equivalent trade for the meal. Hyun says is a chef, and Randolph informs him that a lot of people come to him begging that he should teach them. and Hyun points out that he should just teach them instead of him. Randolph says he does not like any of them, so whenever their paths cross again, he will teach Hyun his swordsmanship, and Hyun can prepare a side dish and beer for him. Hyun reasons that Randolph might be embarrassed to get one-sidedly treated every time, and although he does not mind sharing his knowledge and beer with him, Randolph might feel uncomfortable. Hyun decides to just think of it as a workout since it might help him strengthen his arms so he can properly use heavy walks. A week after opening the restaurant, Hyun reasons that a lot of villagers had visited during the past week. He says to himself that he thought there would be no customers, and he was not expecting any. He looks at Rice Cake, who is watching TV out of boredom, and he joins him, only to see that Rice Cake has been watching a show about unis, a group of female idol stars. Hyun reasons that he has heard their name before, but he is unable to recollect where he had heard it. Meanwhile, Yoonseop is with the Eunice group, and he asks them how their work is going. They all complain about the area and other issues, making Yoonseop feel exhausted. He reasons that since there is nothing scheduled for after the shoots for their show, he should visit Hyun as he is in the area. As he calls Hyun and asks if he can come over for a meal, the girls stare at him wondering who he is talking to. He ends the call and leaves the girls in the care of his assistant. He tells them to be nice to his assistant, and they all smile, asking when they have not been nice and obedient. He knows the girls are always troublesome, but he leaves without saying a word. As Yoonseop leaves, his assistant tells the girls that they should return home, but they tell him to follow Yoonseop. He refuses, and one of them smiles at him and points out that asking for forgiveness is easier than getting permission. Meanwhile, Hyun cleans the restaurant, complaining that Yoonseop should have informed him before he planned to visit, as he might have been busy. He decides to prepare a meal for him, and Yoonseop enters at that moment, berating his assistant that the only cars on the road are theirs, so he notices they are following him. Hyun watches as the assistant apologizes to Yoonseop and the girls and introduces themselves as unis. As the girls pet Rice Cake, Hyun watches, reasoning that his small restaurant in the most backcountry village has been visited by idols. Yoonseop says the girls have grown more courageous than they were at the beginning, and they did not even think of the consequences. Yoonseop says they should return home, but Hyun feels pity for the assistant, and he says it will be better if they return with their stomach full since they are already there. Yoonseop is surprised, as the Hyun he knew would have made a huge fuss about the matter. He watches as Hyun asks the girls what they want to eat, and he reasons that he thought Hyun was mad when he was moving to the countryside to heal, but Hyun has now changed and also has a pet dog. Hyun is in his kitchen wondering what they would like, as he wants to make something delicious for them. He brings out the ingredients he has and decides to prepare a light meal for them. As he prepares the meal, he reasons that it should be something they would like, and also something rich in nutrients and flavor. He serves the food and explains that he made tomato pasta and steak salad. The girls are amazed, and they dig in to eat the food. As they taste the food, they all praise it with different comments, and Hyun tells Yoonseop to let them eat in peace, as he had made a light meal on purpose. Yoonseop says he had no intention of stopping them while they are eating. They both watch as the girls exaggerate how good the meal is, and Hyun asks Yoonseop if he had been starving them before. Hyun tells Yoonseop he should eat, and he has made vongol pasta for him since he will be driving back to Seoul. Yoonseop wonders if Hyun is being considerate of him. He asks Hyun if he is going to die soon, and Hyun replies asking if he looks terminally ill. The girls are ready to leave after eating the meal. They continue to praise it, and Hyun promises to make something better the next time they visit. They also promise to return and call him Chef Kang Hyun before leaving on their bus. Hyun is shocked that they recognize him, and Yoonseop explains that the girls always watch his show whenever they are hungry, and it would have been weirder if they did not recognize him. Yoonseop then enters his car to leave, and Hyun tells him to let him know in advance the next time he wants to visit. Yoonseop asks how Hyun's healing is going, and he says it is going really well. Hyun rides a bicycle with Rice Cake to go to a supermarket. He reasons that the supermarket he bought the spring greens from is the closest to him, and the other supermarkets are in the bigger towns. He gets to the supermarket hoping to get some spring greens. He enters the supermarket and meets a different cashier. He wonders if she is the daughter-in-law of the grandma he met when he was there the last time. The lady asks him if he is looking for anything specific, and he says he will take a look on his own. As he walks around, he realizes that they do not have dailies, and he will need them to make pasta for Grandma Park. She tells him that only has little spring greens, and he reasons that he will have to go to the town to get what he needs. As he leaves promising to come back later, he hears some little kids fighting. As he turns to the fight, he sees a little girl and a boy dragging each other's hair.
Oh, you wanna fight? You wanna fight? I fight all you bitches today. I don't give a fuck.
And saying they will not play with each other again. The boy tells the girl she looks different from the rest of them and that she should go back to her country. This makes the girl sad, but before she retaliates, Hyan interrupts and says they cannot take back words once they have been spoken out loud. He asks the boy if he is sure that he will not regret saying that later, and the little boy stares at him. The cashier at the supermarket steps out, and she turns out to be the mother of the little girl whose name is Myung. As Myung runs to her mother, the boy also runs off, and Myung's mother thanks Hyan for helping her. He says he did not really do anything, but she still thanks him. He then asks if Myung is alright, and she tells him that Myung has fallen asleep. She admits that it is all because of her. Hyan is shocked, and he points out that it was a simple fight among children, and it is not her fault. He then says her name is Yoongan. She is from Vietnam, and she thinks Myung is being bullied because of her.